Hello and welcome to Matchbook's Heineken Cup final, or the Champions Cup final as it's known nowadays, the preview. And it's safe to say that we have the two very best teams here this year. I'm joined by the Irish Independent's rugby correspondent in Newcastle, Rúaidhrí O'Connor. Rory, how are you? And what's the atmosphere like so far?
Good, thanks, Sully. Yeah, it's building. I got over last night. Lots of La Rochelle and Clermont fans in for the Challenge Cup final. They're expecting about 25,000 in St James's Park here tonight. I think the Leinster fans and the Saracens fans are kind of expected to get in. Always with these weekends, you see lots of different jerseys from lots of different teams. People book tickets in advance, so it's kind of a bit of a festival of rugby, and it's in a very non-traditional rugby town, but a party town. So I think that the locals are looking forward to kind of with a big curiosity to see what the rugby crowd bring. But there's a good buzz around. I've never been here before. It's a nice place, and I'm looking forward to seeing a bit more of it and enjoying a bit of rugby. It's a cool stadium, and I think it'll be really good tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it's great that the EPRC are bringing it to these kind of places like they Bilbao last year. What are your general thoughts on that, Rory? I know we're in Marseille next year, but it's good for the game, surely, to spread it to more audience.
Well, I mean, like selfishly, it's kind of you kind of go to the same 6 venues every year for Six Nations and stuff. So I love seeing new places. I think it's really good to go into them. It was a bit of a disappointment that they didn't go to Amsterdam in 2021. It's going to be in London in the new Spurs Stadium, which looks like a great venue as well. But I do like it. I think you got to push the boat out a little bit and be ambitious. And there's no point in going from Twickenham to Cardiff to Murrayfield to the Aviva. I just think it's a good way of varying it. I think it gives the fans another reason to go as well. So, yeah, I'm all for it.
Great stuff. Well, let's talk about the all-important game itself, of course, and let's have a look at the betting here, because pretty much after the semi-finals, both teams open as a pick 'em, but we have seen a lot of money for Saracens in the last week or two, and I've seen most of the sports books have made Saracens favourites. So currently we'll have a look at the match odds. Saracens there at 1.9. You can back Leinster at a very appetising 2.32 right now. We'll get to that in a while. The draw at 19.0. Maybe not the worst bet in the world, because this is going to be tight enough. And you can back Leinster on the 2A money line at 2.12. So if it is a draw. Handicap wise, you can back Saracens minus 2.5, 2.11. Leinster plus 2.5 at 1.74. And that's kind of about it at the moment. Obviously, totals come out late on Friday night, early on Saturday morning. It's a funny one, Rory. I don't think I've ever thought about the referee as much as I have about this game. And generally, most sports, the referee doesn't really come into the equation when we are discussing betting odds and whatnot. But Jerome Garces, especially having looked back at the semi-final, you kind of think that he will have an impact on this game. But can you see Leinster doing something very different to Munster and actually playing to his style? Because there was only one team in the semi-final in Coventry actually played to it. How much of the factor is Garces here, first of all?
And he's definitely a factor, and he was a factor in the semi-final. I don't think he was the reason Saracens won by any means, but they definitely adapted to him better. They pushed the boundaries of what they could get away with way better than Munster did. Munster got frustrated with him. Saracens saw it as an opportunity. I've highlighted a few times this week the time Owen Farrell cleared Peter O'Mahony out from behind, which was just a crazy moment where it just showed that anything went at the breakdown, and the breakdown is key to every game, and it's going to be the key tomorrow. But I do think that Leinster will adapt much better, as they did a year ago when he was in charge of the quarterfinal. So he was in charge of Ireland, England, where nearly most of these players were playing that day as well. They're well used to him. They know what to expect. They've had 3 weeks to look at that semi-final. He's had 3 weeks to kind of be reviewing that semi-final. I'd imagine, despite the fact that he got this game, I would imagine he got a pretty good talking to, because I think he lost control of that semi-final a little bit. But Saracens are a team that, and I mean it as praise, they push the boundaries of what you can get away with. They're hugely illegal, but it's a strength. It's like the way the All Blacks do it. They, with Toje will push and push and push. And if Leinster don't adapt to that, if Leinster don't do it themselves, they'll be bullied. And Garces is a ref that probably will let Saracens do that.
Talk about last year's game against the quarterfinals. So I'll be honest, on the rugby podcast, it was my biggest bet of the year was actually backing Leinster at 1-2, 1.5, Rory. And I kind of looked back on the highlights last night and kind of remembered to myself, yeah, that was a good enough bet. But during the first half of that game, Saracens were kind of toe to toe. They didn't score the tries. Leinster got the early try, but Saracens had a 5-meter line out right towards the end of the first half. If they'd gone over there, it could have been a very different game. How much stock we put into last year's performance here from Saracens, because they were missing a few. Is there anything that we can look at last year and kind of factor into this weekend?
Funny, it's funny how your mind plays tricks on you. I remember Leinster being completely dominant last year, and then I went back and watched it just as you did, and Saracens were well in that game. They played quite well in that first half. Leinster had to play out of their skins. It was one of their best performances. and it possibly didn't get the credit for it because they were comfortable in the second half. The Saracens used the scoreboard as their friend. They did it to Munster. They got 3-6-9, get a try, get ahead of you, and keep you at arm's length, and they squeeze and they squeeze. If Leinster can get ahead tomorrow, they're in for a good day, because a little bit like Ireland, I think Saracens are less comfortable when they're behind. So I think last year is very relevant because the teams haven't changed that much. Leinster probably aren't as good as they were at that point last season, off the back of an Irish Grand Slam. Saracens are better than they were at that point last season, and they probably have a few bodies like, Billy Vunipola is absolutely key. So I think it's highly relevant, and I think it's quite instructive as the way the game will go. Leinster tackled a lot last season that kind of took out the big ball carriers, but you've got Skelton, you've got the two Vunipolas, you've got Maro Itoje, Jamie George. It's going to be hard to stop all those big boys.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about Saracens first of all, because I've been watching them in recent weeks in the Premiership, and they just seem to have gone up a couple of notches. Even with their reserve team last week against Exeter, everyone seems to be just on message. And how do you beat this team when they are all focused like that, Rory? Because if there is any one team that's going to do it, it's Leinster. But they just seem to have the bit between their teeth in the last couple of weeks, and they're just coming to the ball nicely. Whereas on the other side, you could say with Leinster, weirdly enough, outside of the Toulouse game and one or two others, they haven't really hit their straps, but they're in the European final, and they're obviously probably nailed on. They're a 9-point favourite against Munster to qualify for the Pro 14. It's a funny one with Leinster, though, Rory, isn't it? I mean, like, they haven't really done that much, but yet they're there. They're that good.
Absolutely. I mean, just as a side note, that's a great bet on Munster. 9 points is madness a week after a Champions Cup final. But Leinster are the only team I think that can take down the Saracens team at when they're at their best. And I think I did tip Munster, I think, to beat Saracens in the semi-final, but I didn't expect Saracens to be as good as they were. I thought they were still a little bit off where they were in 2016 and 17, and I was wrong about that, because they are absolutely unbelievably formidable outfit, and they squeeze you, and they find a weakness. Like, they found weakness in the Munster backfield. They didn't go up to catch, they went up to spoil. And once they've realised that Mike Haley wasn't confident in that area, they just kept going after him. They got field position, they got ahead, they punished still discipline. And Munster were really good defensively in that first half. They just couldn't live with that for 80 minutes. And the lesson out of that game is the only way to beat the Saracens team is to attack them, is to score, is to get ahead of them and force them to chase you. Because if you're chasing them, you're basically chasing a team that's pulling away into the distance. So I think they're a brilliant team. They're an unbelievable pressure rugby team. They'll find a weakness and they'll hammer that weakness home. The thing about Leinster is Leinster don't have very many weaknesses, and they have the weapons. Like, their back line is phenomenal. Their forwards are very strong. They're well able to cope in the physical exchanges. And they have James Lowe, who is just an unbelievable game breaker, who set up the try for Eastern Sea that gave Leinster that breathing space last season. So of all the teams in Europe, I think they have the weapons to hurt the Saracens team, but it's going to take an almighty effort.
Talk to me about some matchups here, Rory. So obviously we've got the team news now that Michael Rhodes is out and Maro Itoje moves to the back row. Where do you see, I mean, like, there's 15 players on the field. Do you see Leinster maybe having the edge in the front five? Do you see the Saracens back row? For me, I think Saracens have it on them, the halfbacks, because I'm a massive fan of Ben Spencer especially. But then again, you look at the centres, and you can make a case that Lewandowski and Brad Barrett, they're not going to, match up that well against the Leinster guys. Well, they will match up defensively. Where are you at with this? Because I slightly give the edge to Saracens here. Yeah,
I'm giving the edge to Saracens based on their pack, I think. And like, Leinster's pack is excellent, but we saw what the English pack did to the Irish pack, and it's almost line for line the same teams, except for you're throwing Will Skelton in as well, because Michael Rhodes is injured, and he's just a physical specimen who wins collisions and gets over the gain line repeatedly. You've got the Vunipolas, who are just so hard to stop. If you're trying to take people out of the game, there's other players who are going to pop up and win those collisions. And they're a team that if they get on the front foot, if they get rumbling, they have Farrell, who just controls the game brilliantly. They have a lovely attacking shape. It's nothing special in terms of what they do, but it's just so well executed that it causes awful problems. I think Sexton's still probably a little bit better player than Farrell, but you're right, Spencer's a class act. Luke McGrath, very tidy, but probably doesn't have the game-breaking capacity that Spencer has. And then at the backs, I think Leinster probably have more threats, but Saracens have this really, really aggressive line speed, really, really aggressive defence that can nullify pretty much every team. So, so James Lowe could be the point of difference, but then Liam Williams can open the game right up as well. So across the board, they're really well matched. But I just think in the ball carrying physical stakes, Saracens have the edge. And if they get the collisions, it's the key to pretty much everything. They get on the front foot, they give Spencer and Farrell a bit of a platform to play. That's going to be a problem for Leinster.
So let's get to the all-important bets, because this is obviously a very simple one, Rory. It's just such a game that, like, you can use all the cliches, tight margins, every little collision is going to matter here. But I mean, when you're looking at the betting, it's hard to see that either team winning in a blowout here. And I'm looking at these winning margins at the moment. So you can back Saracens 1 to 12 to win by between 1 to 12 points, 2.82, and you can back the same bet for Leinster at 1 to 12. Put me off those, Rory. If you're going to back them in the match odds, you're probably going to say it's not going to be more than 12 points that either team is going to win by.
Probably not, although they both have the capacity that when they get ahead and the other team is chasing, to pick you off. Because, and that game last year got away from Saracens, even though they kept fighting to the death, because they start pushing the envelope. So if Saracens get ahead and if Leinster start chasing the game and pushing it, a bit like Ireland and the Aviva, to go back to that game when Sexton got intercepted as he tried to push the envelope, there is capacity for Saracens to get away from you. And equally Leinster, if they can get ahead and Saracens are pushing, I think if Leinster win, it's going to be tight. If Saracens win, they could get away from Leinster. It's going to. I think if Leinster win, they could get ahead and try and keep Saracens at arm's length, keep it scrappy, a bit like Bilbao last season. Whereas I think Saracens, because of the way they play the game, because of their pressure, because of their line speed, will, if they can get ahead of Leinster, they can get away from Leinster. So I'm kind of sitting on the fence a little bit, but I do think that Saracens. I do think Saracens are going to win the game, and I think if they do win the game, they'll do it pulling away in the end. Because their bench is stronger as well. I should have mentioned that in the matchups. Their bench is much better.
Yeah, so I got you off the fence there, Rory. You fancy Saracens?
Oh, and I do fancy Saracens. I have done pretty much start of the week. I mean, you look at the Leinster 15, unbelievable team. The bench just doesn't have the same level of impact that the Saracens bench does. And just having watched Saracens in the flesh in that semi-final and seeing how frightening they can be, Leinster have been, they were very good against Toulouse as well, and a lovely team to watch. But I think Saracens will nullify their threats. But again, when it was a scratch game, I didn't, I could see the value in backing Leinster, because I think it is very, very easy to call. Sorry, very, very difficult to call. It's very easy to sit in the fence because they're two really, really good teams. But just my feeling right now, and I think having watched that game in Coventry, also having covered the England-Ireland game, which was pretty comprehensive, I just think Saracens have the edge and the bit of momentum as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I also do believe if the total opens at mid-40s, I'll be back in the under, because I do believe with the French referee, what Gareth says, when he's allowing that much of a contest at the ruck, it slows down quick ball, and it just becomes that bit more of an attritional kind of game.
And it's forecast for showers tomorrow as well.
There you go, yeah. I think I'm looking at the forecast here at the moment, 2.2 millimeters to fall between 12 and 6 o'clock. So, yeah, and a light breeze. So, yeah, sunny northeast holds true. Roy, let's have a quick look before we head off for the first choice score bets. Always a kind of a popular one on finals, especially if someone wants to throw down a 10 or 20 quid one. Anyone you're looking at in particular here, the kind of a biggest price?
Well, they're both teams who like them all, so the hookers are always a decent idea. Jamie George is a really good ball carrier, but I think Skelton I think that they'll both go to the packs early on. So, James Lowe will be an obvious one of someone, a game breaker out wide, but I think it's going to come through the forwards, and I think Skelton's a good bet because he's such an impressive ball carrier. He's so hard to stop. If he gets a one-on-one with a lighter player, it's just physics. He's going to get over the line. So I think, even if they get it down in the 22, they start mauling, they start, that multi-phase game. It could be someone like him barreling over. So I'm not sure what odds he is at this stage, but he's
61.0. He's a 61 shot. He's fourth class in the betting, Rory. So that'll tell you that the market hasn't really caught up.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Last weekend, I don't know if you saw the game against Exeter. So he was kind of one of those players that was kind of on the fringe of the first team that started, and he bowled the Exeter fly half guard Steenson out of the way. Literally ran through him like he was a little child. And like you said, like, he's just an absolute monster. Just if you want to go onto YouTube and just put that in there, and yeah, you'll definitely have 10 or 20 quid at 60.0.
Lost a lot of weight this season, and he's still over 20 stone. So he's some boy. He's going to be hard to stop. So yeah, give him a shot.
Yeah, all right. So we're on the Saracens bandwagon. It's going to be a tough one for you, Rory. But I mean, look, it's such a tight game that I don't think it's a game to be really kind of getting carried away with any of, to be honest.
Absolutely not. Yeah, it could go either
yeah,
way.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Rory, it's been a pleasure for the quarterfinals, the semi-final and the final. We'll have you back for the Rugby World Cup. It's not that far away now. It seems like the summer is we're into the summer in Newcastle and heading out to Tokyo.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit of a break for let the guy have its moment. But yeah, looking forward to that. Should be good.
That's great. Thanks for joining me, mate. And best luck with rugby bets for this weekend, folks. Don't forget, you haven't got a matchbook account. You can sign up today for a £10 risk-free bet and maybe have it on the Will Skelton bet. Enjoy the rugby, and we'll talk to you again.